Alcohol blame it on the.
Could you imagine your neighborhood bar without beer? Or even wine removed from restaurants and houses? Or even going to a baseball game and seeing no alcohol served? Or even seeing these trucks removed from the streets? Or even Las Vegas with no drunk people, no beer, no problems? Or even DUIs eliminated? Or even this border, instead of a drug border, an alcohol border? At one point in American history, this was true. In this documentary, we'll explain the views of males and females in the Prohibition, also how smuggling was involved in this era, and how this infected the crime rate. The start of the Prohibition was in the early 1900s, specifically the 1920s and 1930s, but the first law against alcohol was in Kansas and Missouri as early as 1881 and lasted till 1948 in Kansas, longer than any state. And to this day, Kansas has not ratified the 21st Amendment, which ended the nationwide prohibition in 1933. You might ask yourself, what is the Prohibition? The Prohibition is the ratification of the 18th Amendment banning the manufacturing, transportation, and sale of intoxicating alcohol. The result of this widespread temperance that occurred during the early 20th century resulted in difficulty to control the Prohibition and increased the manufacturing of illegal alcohol and liquors, also known as bootlegging. It also increased illegal sports drinking, which is also called proliferation, and skyrocketed the gang violence and crime rates. The Volisted Act pretty much describes the 18th Amendment, stating that all manufacturing of alcohol liquors are prohibited across the country. But at one point, the legislature and government had to end the prohibition for many reasons. First of all, enforcement of the prohibition was very difficult in the course of 1920s. The prohibition era dramatically increased crime rates in the course of bootlegging, making it even more difficult to control the prohibition law. A good example of this was a man named Al Capone who made it famous by bootlegging alcohol. He has a large involvement in ties with the mafia and gangs, which resulted in multiple murders and committing many crimes. Congress could not handle such desperation as jobs started to decrease, as well as they made the 21st Amendment that would repeal the 18th Amendment. This concluded the prohibition of manufacturing intoxicating alcohols and alcohol throughout the country. Supporters of the prohibition will might be surprise you. Women were much in favor of the prohibition. Many protests for the prohibition and the ratification of the 18th Amendment. Women were tired of their husbands coming home drunk and wasted from the bar, and abusing them and neglecting them and not watching over their children. So they went to Washington and protested that beer be banned across America. The connection from past to present was many people today are suffering from alcohol addiction, and many studies have shown that alcohol can be bad for short term and long term health effects to the mind and body. In the prohibition in the 1930s, many people did not know about the health risks about alcohol and the addiction to alcohol. So should they ban alcohol again, or will they not ban alcohol again? They have shed some more light on alcohol, and it has become increasingly a more controversial topic in the U.S. Mafia during the Prohibition. During the 1920s in the Prohibition era, the 18th Amendment in the U.S. banned the sale, manufacture, and transportation of alcohol beverages. Italian gangs, along with ethnic gangs, entered the bootleg liquor business and transformed themselves into a criminal enterprise, really good at smuggling money and laundering and bribing the police and other public officials. During this time, the Sicilian mafia in Italy, which had flourished during the mid 19th century, was under attack under the regime of Benito Mussolini. Most Sicilian most escaped to the United States, where they would get involved with the American mafia in the U.S. In the 1920s, a bloody power struggle during the Calamitous War broke out in New York City's two biggest Italian wars. Many people blame the Prohibition for this war and for the organization of crime and the gangs.